All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us. Unfortunately, Nico it can't be with us today, but we're very much look forward to speaking with him at another time. So I'd like to kind of open up the floor to you all, the viewers, and continue the kind of question and answer that we were doing earlier. And then after we've had our little discussion here, we're hopefully going to be able to play some mashup videos for you all of the kind of overall discussions that we've had during this vigil and maybe some of the previous vigils. So yeah, I'm really grateful for all of the questions that you might have ready to ask. If you didn't have your questions answered earlier that you'd like to have shared with the audience, then please, resubmit them. I'd like to answer them. So just really, again, as I said earlier, it's always really encouraging to see what you all are thinking and engage with you, so that it isn't just this sort of monologue to you, but it's an actual back and forth and an engagement, a two-way street with the audience and with your questions. So Grey Rose Tint asks, can he receive mail? Yes, he can. He can receive postcards and letters at the very least. And there is it's at number 3 Hans Crescent, but the full address is on Twitter and it's in other, well, let me just think about there is a call to action regarding postcards that has been enacted through Greek Emmy on Twitter and Wise Up Action. But basically, I will ask my tech and social media team to please link to that call out for postcards, and link to where they can viewers and readers can find the address of Julian Assange, because absolutely we've had a number of guests who have experienced imprisonment and confinement by the state themselves, who have said that receiving letters and cards really kept up their connection to humanity, and it really helped preserve their spirits so that they didn't fall into the worst of the sort of malaise or depression that can come when you are confined for a very long time. So it's a really great question about mail, and yes, he can receive it. Yes, you're encouraged to send letters and postcards. And yeah, if we can get our social media support or tech support to just link to the call out for that postcard campaign and the address, that would be fantastic. And so Jenny Lynn asks, Elizabeth, can we contact Joe about asking Oliver Stone on the vigil? That is something that I believe will be, looked into. I know that Susie does a fantastic job reaching out in every way possible to try and get not only a diverse range of opinions, but, really expertise and insight into the world of WikiLeaks, into, establishment media and independent media, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, I think every option, every person involved in this fight will be contacted, and hopefully we'll get to hear from them at some point. Yeah, and so somebody, Hoodie Woman Louisiana, comments that last interview shook her, and I think, or them, and I think that for me too, I think getting the insight of someone like Joe Lauria, who has been watching this industry for so long and who is able to really sum up kind of the inside or cultural changes that have happened within the establishment press is really, even though we've maybe heard the information before, I do think it hits home more, to hear him from his experience speak about it. Rasily O'Connor says, I wonder if there are any books he wants sent, given he cannot read anything online. Yeah, I think that's actually a really great idea. I know that some people have tried to send packages that have been returned because there are very specific limitations on what he can receive, like it has to be like a certain color, etc. So again, I hope that the call out to postcards will be linked in chat for you all soon, and you can also look up the address. I know that a number of people on Twitter have posted it, and I have too. And once I am off this live stream, I will retweet where the posts where I have listed his address so that you can send things. I don't know about books. I've never tried to send him a book myself, but I think that one idea that kind of builds on that but isn't sending an entire book might be to send a printed version of an article. If you see something that you think Julian Assange might want to read, maybe just send like a printout of an article that he wouldn't be able to access because he's not able to be online. And then Nikki M says, does anyone have a list of facts to use against people who smear Julian? I think that one of the best places you can go to find facts to kind of rebut all of the disinformation would be justiceforassange.com. I believe it's .com. Let me just check that to make sure that that's correct. Justice number 4 Assange is the site that you want to go to, because that has an overview of all. Yes, it's justiceforassange.com. That's correct. It has the video of the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention ruling in Julian Assange's favor. It has all sorts of important information, like concrete, tangible information about not only the controversy surrounding him and the disinformation that's been spread about it, but also the way in which the judicial proceedings around Julian Assange have been so corrupt, basically. And so anything you want to know about his legal case or about his case in general, justiceforassange.com is an absolutely priceless storehouse of information. And every time I visit it, I learn something new. So that it is extremely helpful. That's the most concise answer I can give you about sort of like a database of information to help educate people who have swallowed establishment media narratives about Assange. So I'm just looking through chat to see what other questions we've got. Artemis says, so if Julian's health deteriorates further, will Brits have the power to take him to the hospital by force, or are they hoping he'll fade away and say he made the choice not to leave the embassy? Unfortunately, I think that, as a number of people have pointed out, whether it's Christine Assange, Julian Assange's mother, or whether it's, Caitlin Johnstone or Susie Dawson or myself, we're all aware of the fact, and we've spoken about the fact, that it seems that Julian Assange is not only being tortured in a slow motion sense, he's, and I believe Pamela Anderson also said this, that it's a slow motion murder at this point that's happening in front of our eyes, where we were told months ago by doctors who examined him that Julian Assange is suffering very much in a medical, physical sense from the confinement that he's been limited to for the last 6 years now. And then I can't imagine how much it's taken a toll on him to be isolated further. It's really, really a horrific situation, and unfortunately I think that is intentional. I think they're intentionally dragging this out and trying to force him to leave the embassy through that type of physical pain. Obviously he's extremely, extremely strong, and I doubt that many people could stand this situation in the way that he has. Okay, I'm just reading some of your comments. Does anyone know where Roger Waters is on the Julian situation? That's something I haven't looked into that at all. I guess you could reach out to him on Twitter and tag him and kind of ask him that question. I know that even though it seems like somebody that maybe famous or whatever wouldn't read their mentions, but I'm sure that they do. So you might as well give it a shot and ask him what he thinks. Shall we say double bind? Yes, I think Tina Colby, you're exactly right. It's a double bind. It's a siege. I think Caitlin Johnstone was really accurate when she called it a siege of the embassy. That this is a military situation. It's not even a diplomatic situation. Jenny Lynn says he's super supportive of Julian. Okay, interesting. So if Julian, so do you guys have any more? Okay, here we go. Nikki M says, is there a plan for people near London to do anything if Julian is removed from the embassy? That's a great question, and I think that the answer to that is that actually, as we said before, there have been people standing in solidarity with Julian Assange outside the embassy for the entirety of the span that he's been arbitrarily confined there. And they have mostly organized through a group called Wise Up Action. And so there has, as I'm expressing, there's always been a solidarity movement outside the embassy. But in the last few months, as Julian Assange has been isolated, that solidarity movement has definitely escalated and picked up steam. Absolutely, part of that is to watch and make sure that if anything changes on the ground, that there is an alert to the independent media and to the supporters of Julian Assange. And so especially now, at this time when we've heard all sorts of news about supposedly Assange being expelled illegally from the embassy, that there are more people on the ground than ever. And if you are able to get to the UK and visit the Ecuadorian Embassy in London, you are absolutely encouraged to do that. And if not, if for example, you're in Australia or the US, then please, go out onto the streets, really protest and take it upon yourself to do something to show that you are in support of Julian Assange. And if you don't want to do that, if you'd rather stay online, we have the Discord server and etc. that we've talked about before that you are, encouraged to join and collaborate with, 2,500 other people that equally want to help Julian Assange as well. So I'm just reading through some more of your comments here. But yeah, returning to Nikki M's question, is there a plan for people near London to do anything if he's removed from the embassy? I know that the actions on the ground at this time are obviously, non-violent. They are just, I think, simply, wanting to build support and protest, but in a non-violent sense. I would hope that if anything happened, that at the very least, it would be witnessed by a large number of people, both on the ground and on social media, that this would not happen in darkness and, unwitnessed, because it would be such a travesty of justice, and it would be just downright illegal and a flagrant disregard for the rule of law. Yeah, Anne Garrison asks, did you say that there is a lawyer with Julian at all times? It seems to be, that's a report that I've heard. I've heard a number of people kind of banter or bandy that term about a little bit. I don't know if we can say whether or not there is a lawyer with him at all times, but I do know that though he is completely cut off from social media, from the internet, and from contact with family and friends and loved ones, he does have access to his legal team. So that is the one type of connection that has not been completely severed. I don't think we can say for certain whether they are with him at all times, but I do know that obviously he still has contact with them, which thank God he does, because if he was completely and utterly isolated, it would be a full-on disaster. So. Okay, so in addition to asking you all for questions, is there anything that you think that, that we haven't covered that you would like to see covered in future segments? Any feedback? Because I really do want to emphasize that we enjoy hearing feedback from you all and interacting with you and kind of, seeing what you've observed or what you've taken in, because everyone is different in the way that they learn and assimilate information or think, click onto one thing being important where somebody would have picked a different thing. And in Decipher You, Susie Dawson and I would see the same information and pick out, inferences from it that were completely different. And it was really, a learning experience for us both to see, it was almost like getting double the information because we would both see different things in the same text. So that's a really long way of saying, you guys, when you're listening to the vigils, you might have an insight that other people wouldn't have. And so it's helpful to kind of hear from you guys and see what you've made of it. I'm just reading through chat again. Yeah, I don't think that the royal family is really a tangent that I want to go on, because I just don't see that it's really relevant or helpful. Tina Colby says, I have thought to talk with this chap who works somewhere. He's, I guess, in London. Well, I'm not sure where that would go, but I guess thank you for the comment. Vegan Trove asks, can you possibly interview Julian Burnside? I think that ideas on who we can interview definitely should maybe throw those in the Discord, and I believe there is a channel for the Unity 4J Vigil, but maybe I'm mistaken. Definitely, I think throwing those ideas around and adding names to the growing pot of people that we invite and reach out to is always positive, and thank you for raising that. I can't just sit here and answer, can I interview so-and-so, or can we interview so-and-so, because, we can reach out, but we can't, guarantee that they'll want to be interviewed. We can't guarantee that they will want to speak with us. So it's always a bit of a surprise on how the vigil turns out and where it goes. So Yeah. Hazed to you says that they liked the visual of Assange being the bait on a fishing line. Well, I have to say that I really don't like that visual. I don't like that metaphor, and I definitely also do not like the idea of Lea Moreno using Assange as leverage or bait. And unfortunately, I think even though it sounds awful, because it is, I think that's exactly what we're witnessing. And so I think we have to, you know, face it head on, that's the situation we seem to be faced with at the moment. I also think that the Unity 4J vigil and all of the efforts surrounding it, as well as the Discord server, have made a difference. I don't think that we can take credit for, fully take credit, because we just don't know what went on as far as what may have changed between the time that we all heard that Assange would be imminently expelled from the embassy and the week passing and nothing seemed to happen. We can guesstimate that maybe the Unity 4J efforts had an effect on that. We don't know, but I hope that was at least part of it. Nikki M says Gordon Dimmock would be a great interview. Okay, thank you for adding that name. I will try to pass that on to Susie, and we'll see what we can do. Jane MC says, when I first heard the WikiLeaks, I had already known okay. I'm just reading through some of these comments. Let's get John Pilger. I think that would be a fantastic. We would love to have John Pilger and, a lot of amazing people on this stream. I mean, that would be an absolute honor if you would join us. Again, I can't promise, that we can just, have people on, because they have busy schedules, and, we can't just kind of whip them out of a hat or something like that. Jefferson Free Press says, why don't we have a team outside the embassy? The thing is that as I said, there is an ongoing vigil outside the embassy, and there are only so many people in the world that are living in London or are in the UK. And a lot of us, although we would like to visit the embassy in person and show our solidarity in that way, we can't make it there. And so we all encourage people to get to the embassy, if they can. Please do. And, that is absolutely something we encourage. Now, I don't think that we have put together a team on the ground, but I may be wrong about that. There may be a channel dedicated to that. I know that in the Discord server, in the Unity 4J Discord server, I did notice that somebody was putting together a carpooling to the embassy. They were in the UK and they were going on a certain route. And they said, if you live on this route, and you want to go to the embassy, I can take you. So there is that type of effort going on within the Unity 4J Discord server. And I hope that continues. Okay, yeah. Laurie Mountain Gal Pal says, can someone talk about the court in Virginia where they tried Manning, which is where they would try Julian in the US? Yes, that's an incredibly important point. That's one that CIA whistleblower John Kiriakou has talked about in multiple vigils, I believe. And it's not only a problem that the fact that it would be a secret indictment, but from what John Kiriakou explained, Julian Assange would not even be able to see the evidence against him because it would be classified. He wouldn't be able to, engage with his own defense because his defense lawyer would have to have security clearances and would have access to information that he couldn't share with Julian. So it would be an absolute disaster. It would be, I think, John Kiriakou indicated there would probably be no jury in this type of situation. It would all be done under complete secrecy, and it would be, building from that, it would be completely unfair. And yes, we've seen with the persecution of Chelsea Manning that these situations are punishing the truth tellers and not punishing the people that are actually committing the crimes that truth tellers like Chelsea Manning expose. I'm just reading through comments a little bit for a second. Yeah, and Bruce King adds, we do have wonderful communications with vigilists at the embassy, Emmy, Kieran, Clara, etc. Yeah, and that's what I'm referring to with Wise Up Action, and I know that Kieran is a major, is supportive and is a member of the Catholic worker community. There are a lot, and it's not just like Kieran and Emmy and Clara, it's also like Ecuadorian citizens have been going to the embassy in the UK and protesting Moreno's line. You know, there are lots and lots of people that stop by every single day. So if you have the opportunity to do that, please do. There is an established group on the ground, and they encourage people to be nonviolent, dress well, and just come out and show your support for Julian if you possibly can. Yvonne M. Langlois says kangaroo court. Absolutely, that's exactly what he would face if he was tried in Virginia in the US, which I hope it does. I hope we don't ever see it come to that. But if that would be the outcome, it would definitely be a kangaroo court.
I suppose one thing to add there on the aspect, if you are live at an event, then do pop into our Discord and let us know. We've got a special channel reserved for live broadcasts from on the ground, especially if you're at the embassy. So make the effort, and we'll broadcast your message a bit wider. So yeah, just a note on that while I was thinking about it.
No problem.
There is essentially a live stream team of a few people that have been on the ground and can either periscope or stream, as well as you've obviously seen Rupley and a few others that occasionally turn up. Anyway,
definitely. And so if you guys have any more questions, I would really like to hear them. I'm seeing a few more pop up. So Brian Crosby asks, what are the chances that the Pope will show up and help? I don't think we can really estimate that. I know that Julian Assange has followed the Pope, and that the Catholic worker movement is obviously really encouraging the Pope to stand up in solidarity with Julian Assange, to call on the international community for protection of a truth teller and a journalist. I really do hope that the Pope stands up for Julian Assange. Obviously, we can't guarantee that will happen. Obviously, even within religions, there are often a lot of politics that go on, behind the scenes. So I think we can hope. I know that there is actually a petition, I think, going around that is addressed to the Pope in order to encourage him to stand up for Julian. So if you see that, please, retweet it, sign it, and share it. Can we crowdfund food and lodging for someone to occupy the embassy 24/7? Yeah, I think, I'm not sure. I don't know exactly how you can, fund the efforts going on at the embassy, but I do think that there is some sort of effort to support them financially, staying in hotel rooms and etc. I can't give you that information like right off the top of my head, because I don't know that information, but definitely if you hang out in the Discord server, I think that, and you ask that question, I think that you'll either be answered or directed to the appropriate site where you can access that and maybe help out. And Tina Colby says it would be great if a flash mob could show up and demonstrate support, integrate the arts, youth for cause and truth. I think that especially in Australia, there have been a really great showing of youth and workers, and I think the World Socialist website has done a really great job talking about not only the efforts on the ground in front of the embassy, but also in places like Sri Lanka, in India, in Australia. There have been absolutely global demonstrations of solidarity with Assange. And I'm so glad that, even though the establishment media will never report on that, I'm glad that there are independent outlets that are willing and really, enthusiastically reporting in a way that is helpful to Julian Assange's cause. Okay, this is a really good question. Rosalie O'Connor says, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Rosalie, but she asks, is it acceptable to join Discord but still be a lone wolf? I work better that way currently, but I get incredible value from what's on Discord, etc. Or is there someone I can ask about that? I think that would be perfectly acceptable to join Discord, gather some really great, inspiration from the work going on there, but then also apply it maybe on your own. That is perfectly acceptable and fine. And there's no just as there's no one set of tools that everybody fits into, there's no set of, like best ways to help that everybody has to go after. Everyone is able to help in their own way, and whatever works best for you is how, you should do that and enact that. As Kieran is able to stand in front of the embassy for hours and hours physically, I could never do that, but I'm here speaking with you because that's what I can do. And so if you're an artist, this sounds really old, but if you're an artist, there is a graphic design and art channel. We have all sorts of different channels, legal channels, communications, scribe channels. It's just, it's an incredibly diverse range of ways that you can help in the Discord server. But yes, you do not have to be somebody that wants to get involved in a collaborative way. It is perfectly fine to feel more comfortable acting on your own and either, maybe not join the Discord server if it overwhelms you. But if you want to, please do. No matter what, I guess, what I'm trying to boil that down to is that no matter what your style is, you go with that, because that, we just want everyone to help and to know that your contribution is valued no matter what form it takes. So Nikki M says, most people with social media roles are alone working and you've been tweeting all day. Yeah, thank you. And every single person that does anything it makes a difference, And I think that, sometimes people don't realize the impact that they make, and they kind of underestimate their own, the value of their role. And I really, if there's one thing I can hammer home in this kind of segment, it's just that every single person's contribution makes a real difference, and to never ever feel like you're just banging your head against a wall, making no progress, because it is making a difference. As this social media, as this movement, the Unity 4J movement grows into a mass movement, it is correcting the record on Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. It is combating the censorship and the smearing of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, and it is making a real difference. And I hope that it will germinate into a huge consensus that, as Kevin Zeese tells us, once we have just 3% of the population on board actively and a national consensus, a movement becomes unstoppable. And so I hope that we can get to that point, quickly.
Yeah, unstoppable. Yes, unstoppable. 1 or 2 or 3%. That's all we need. Mm-hmm. We had 1.4% in Internet Party in 2014, and certainly changed the world, for me at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's a really encouraging percentage to remember, is that it, like Kevin Z says, and he told us that it is only 3% of the population has to be mobilized. But the really, truly critical part of that is that in addition to the 3% mobilized, there has to be a national consensus. And so what you all are doing as part of Unity 4J, whether you're on the Discord, whether you're just participating in the vigil, whatever it is, you guys are helping build that national consensus, and you are the part of that percentage of people that is actively mobilized for this cause. So it is incredibly important to continue that. So it's Vegan Trove says, it's great to see other Australians standing up for Assange. It seems so unpopular here in Australia. That's a shame. I really am. I was hoping, and I thought that from the news coverage that I've seen from the World Socialist website and elsewhere, it seemed like there is a growing contingency of Australians who are standing up for Julian Assange now. I thought that was really encouraging to see that. Of course, it's not going to be presented that way on mainstream media, but I get a sense from what people have told us as guests in this vigil over the last few months, is that there definitely does seem to be a mobilization of Australian citizens who are like, they want to have, Assange protected and defended by their government as an Australian citizen. I'm just reading some more of your wonderful comments. Nikki M says, what's the best way to get corporate media involved? Their silence is deafening. I don't think shaming works. I don't think that there is much hope of getting corporate media involved. I mean, I think that they, as we've discussed throughout the vigil, were, maybe lenient or positive towards WikiLeaks and Assange in 2007, 2008, when WikiLeaks was publishing information that was damaging to the Bush administration. But right now, with the current climate, I don't know that establishment media could be in any way swayed to help Assange, much less stop, reproducing false allegations or reproducing incorrect information that they constantly publish about Assange. So I think that, if anything, what we have to do with the Indy4J vigil and the Discord server and etc. is to replace the establishment press and their deafening silence. We have to become that voice that is not coming from establishment press at this time. And we have to recognize that the journalists that are, covering for the establishment and their crimes are not going to speak for us or Julian Assange. So, as I said, we have to be that voice and do that in our own right, because no one else will do it for us. Yeah, Nikki M says maybe this Unity4J movement is newsworthy in itself. Absolutely. And, we've written at Disobedient Media, where I'm editor-in-chief of Disobedient Media. We covered this, many times. I think that also, not only is this movement newsworthy, but so are the other events, whether it was the solidarity demonstrations on the 19th, which was the 6th anniversary of Julian Assange entering the embassy. There have been a lot of newsworthy developments in this case and newsworthy shows of solidarity. And so independent media has been picking up where establishment media has left off and not done its job. And I think actually, and I know that, I think it was earlier today that Susie actually interviewed Flick Ruby, who is a PhD student who has been just turning out some amazing threads on Twitter about the value of WikiLeaks in terms of the information they've published and what it has revealed to us. And I wrote an article from my perspective as someone who was an independent journalist on just the stories that Disobedient Media has covered that would have been impossible to write about if it wasn't for the information published by WikiLeaks. And there was a massive diversity in the types of stories that WikiLeaks publications affected. And so that was just in the terms of from Disobedient Media's stories. So what Flick Ruby has done is she's gone through and kind of covered the a large part of the whole spectrum on newsworthy stories that WikiLeaks has informed us on. And I think that her threads are incredibly, mind-blowing, honestly, to see the types of information that WikiLeaks has brought us. And it really drives home the fact that establishment media is not doing its job, and the fact that the hypocrisy of the fact that they would backstab an organization that has brought us such incredibly important stories. Just reading through some of these comments. Yeah, Hoodie Woman Louisiana says, any Catholics or other similar faith may want to pray to benefit Julian Assange. I think that obviously, this movement is not going to focus on any sort of religion, whether it's one or the other, or denomination, or etc. But I don't see any harm in adding Assange's name to a prayer circle, or whatever faith you may or may not be a part of. If you can show support not only through actual prayer circles, but by raising the issue in your community, whether it's a church, a mosque, a synagogue. If you can raise Julian Assange's story in that community, that's another way of networking solidarity and raising awareness about his situation. But I do want to say that Julian Assange has said many times, especially over the last few days, that you cannot leave it up to faith to save Julian Assange. So there's nothing wrong with praying. There's nothing wrong with submitting his name to prayer circles or whatever. But do not allow that to replace action. Do not allow that to stand in the place of fighting really, really hard on his behalf. And I know that Christina said that a number of times, so I want to throw that in there as well. There's nothing wrong with it, but it cannot replace action.
And just to continue with that, there is a group on our Discord for interfaith solidarity where we will accept your your efforts towards whatever you believe in, as long as we're working together and uniting on whatever it is. So yeah, come join the server. There is a circle of people. I think I can probably check on it now. There was some 15 odd people of faith that are combining together to what we can, whether it's approaching the Pope, whether it's doing whatever we can to make it happen.
Absolutely, because it's not as if a faith-based action has to be only in the form of prayer. I mean, it can be a concrete way of building solidarity as far as the community outreach. Because, I mean, just speaking from my experience in my local community, I'm not religious personally, but I know that in my community there are churches that do genuinely good work, with the homeless and et cetera, et cetera. So if you have a faith group around you that is socially active, especially, please, raise the issue of Julian Assange with them, because that is a really valuable, and it's a sort of, it's a topic that we don't broach often in these types of discussions, because nobody wants to, tread on any religious ideology. It's a sensitive area, and I understand that, but I do think that there's a really great value in the community that can surround faith-based organizations and the community actions that can take place if you raise Julian Assange in those communities. Yes, and Mary Vaux says, you know that this chat is showing up on the screen. Yes, it is. So if you guys don't know, the chat is showing up on the screen right now. So just be aware of that when you post. Insubordinate says, I try to bring up Julian Assange with many people I meet. It's disheartening to know how many people who I meet who know nothing about him, and it's even more disheartening when they don't seem interested. I completely agree. And it is really saddening that there does seem to be this persistent ignorance and disinterest about some of the most important and crucial stories and events in our world today. It's definitely can be disheartening, but I also hope that will drive us to work as hard as we possibly can to raise that awareness. That's why it's so important to go into whatever community groups you have and talk about this. Not just social media, but in your physical community, raise this issue. And as Christine Assange has said so many times, raise it with your politicians, raise it with your representatives, no matter what country you're in. Go to your representatives and say, you will not get my vote if you do not protect Julian Assange. And also, write letters to NGOs demanding that they stand in solidarity with Julian Assange. Do whatever you can to raise awareness about this situation. Mary asks, is Julian's mum going to be on the vigil at some point at all? No pressure. Well, actually, she was scheduled to come on to an emergency event that we held when news was breaking that Julian Assange may, might imminently be expelled from the embassy. Obviously he hasn't been, but at the time we didn't know what was going to happen in the next few hours or days following that emergency event. And Christine was scheduled to come on to that vigil or that emergency event, but actually was technologically was prevented from doing so in a way that looked very much like she was actually prevented through interference and some censorship. So, so basically what I'm trying to say is that she has attempted to join us. It seems that she was prevented from doing so. And it's just an example of the degree to which the intelligence agencies in the establishment are afraid of what Christine has to say. And it's another way of extending the silencing of Julian Assange, extending to his close friends and relatives. Like that is so telling. It really is. Yeah, Hoke says the civil rights movement started in churches. I don't know about that, but I think that the churches, synagogues, mosques, whatever community centers you have are a great place, especially because faith-based organizations are supposed to be based in compassion and love for your fellow man and not on political issues. So that if you raise it in the sense of this is another human being who is suffering, I think that's a really great way to raise the issue of Julian Assange, you know, in a manner that is not about political divisiveness. Okay, so Nikki M says she's emailed her MP in the UK. Yeah, Assange hasn't been mentioned in Parliament for months. Yeah, I believe that it's definitely seeming like they're, you know, just treating this with silence because there's no way to address this that makes the establishment look good at this time. Especially since last year, the Swedish investigation was officially dropped. And so now there is no reason for Assange to be arbitrarily confined in the embassy whatsoever beyond the aggression of the US and the UK and the basic military siege that he's under. There's just no cover story for that anymore. So that's why I think that there is a kind of blackout on Assange's situation in places like Parliament, but there is also an equally hysterical attempt to smear him that is escalating, especially over the last few weeks, which has been really awful to see. And it looks like we are now heading towards the end of this segment. I thank you all for contributing your wonderful questions and your comments. It's been really great to interact with you all. I've really enjoyed kind of hearing your thoughts and your, you know, feedback on what questions you have about what you can do, feedback on ideas that you have. And I'm really glad that I got to spend this time kind of hearing back from you as opposed to just, you know, speaking with one person who then you guys hear, but you don't get to respond to yourselves. So I really, you know, thank you guys for contributing and collaborating with me here for this segment. And I know that now we are going to a technical break, which is not just a way of saying, you know, we're going to pause for a while. There is a technical reason that we have to take a break in order to render videos, et cetera, et cetera. So after that, I know that, you know, we will continue. There'll be more amazing guests for you guys to listen to. And thank you so much for tuning in as much as you have. It's been really an honor to be with you all. So, and to speak with the amazing guests that we've had today, yesterday. It's just an absolute, you know, privilege. So thank you. And I will see you tomorrow.